Yeah, I mean, for some people, it's a non-issue. As is certainly Jurgen Klopp, who never really puts too much importance or stock in social media, will think it's a nonsense and a nothing event. But for a 24-year-old footballer who clearly puts a lot of importance on it, it could be quite significant. I go back to when he first joined and he had that friendly against Manchester United, and there was a few like compilations doing the rounds of him, missing a few chances and whatever else, and he put that post on, didn't he? Was it Resiliencia, which translates to resilience? He clearly listens to what is being said and spoken about on social media. I've seen him blocking a couple of Liverpool accounts today. So clearly he's scrolling and seeing what's being said of him. So, look, I'm sure the critiques have probably veered into abuse at some point, and it's got the better of him, and he's decided to, for whatever reason, he's deleting the images, and not really sure the intention behind it, but it doesn't look too great, does it? But on the flip side, you can also argue that maybe it's not a major deal. It depends very much on how you view social media. But yeah, it's an interesting one. But again, I think he shouldn't really be in the story yesterday. He only played 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Straight offside, laid in Mo Salah, could have laid in someone else towards the end of the game.
Gakpo it was, yeah.
Could have scored. Vicario flew out of the traps, and that's kind of how it's been with Nunez. It's like he nearly does it, but doesn't quite. And that's been the story of, he's been a Liverpool player 2 years next month. And you're still waiting for him to catch fire, and you can see the potential, but you can also see what needs to be worked on. And at a certain point, you're asking, will we ever see this player who we think he can be? And I think that's a fair question to ask nearly 2 years in.
Do you think we'll ever see the player that he can be?
Well, what player can he be? I think that's the problem, isn't it? My worry with him, not to do with the social media thing. I mean, going back to that, I saw it last night where he deleted all the images from this season, and he still had the ones from last season on. But obviously, overnight or this morning, he's just lost it again and just decided to delete all of them. That was clearly because he doesn't want to see what Liverpool fans or people suggesting they are Liverpool fans are saying about him, about his performances for Liverpool. And if the thing is with social media, if it's gone above just talking about his performances, then I can see why he would have done it, because there's no need for that. But if you're playing a professional footballer, playing for one of the leading clubs in the world, you're going to get criticism. And if you're, kind of encouraging your brand, as a lot of these footballers are of a certain age, you might call them millennials. I'll just call them younger than me, which is increasingly most people. Yeah, that's just par for the course. They're used to it. They've been brought up with it, whereas the likes of us haven't. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you should have to put up with it. But having said that, I think he should possibly, if it's not gone up beyond his performances, he shouldn't really have done it, because, as you just mentioned, shouldn't have been the story after yesterday. I did a little bit in my analysis and pointed out that for the second season running, he's got towards the last 10 games of the season, and he's become less and less of a influence on Liverpool, and Cody Gakpo's again being the one who's ended up taking that position up front. And I know we were speaking about it before we came in here, saying is it going to be a big season for him next season? Well, I think if Jurgen Klopp was still here, there'd be no doubt that he'd still be there, because Klopp obviously was the one who was quite keen to buy him, and they've sanctioned the big money for him, and they've kind of not built a team around him, but they've changed the way they play a little bit to accommodate him. But now there's a new manager coming in, and especially a Dutch manager who knows exactly what Gakpo can do. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I mean, personally, I think there's no point in getting rid of Nunez, but as you said, because who's going to pay a massive amount of money at the moment, even though if you take away all the noise around him, you just look at his numbers for this season, you go, well, actually, he's been quite good. If it was Liverpool looking at a player that they wanted to sign, you look and go, well, he might be somebody that might be worth looking at. But I think that there's a new manager coming in does make it very interesting. I
feel like it's exactly that going into the summer. You will get clubs that will look at him and go, we can work with him and make him better. Yeah. I do wonder if you got a big bid, if you got 55, 60 million, the Liverpool will go, do you know what, we'll take it off your hands because we've worked with him a couple of years and we don't think that we can get him there. But the flip side of it is Ancelotti might come in and look at him and look at those numbers and look at his performances and go, well, I can work with him, I can make him better.
The problem you've got, sorry to interrupt, like I did last time, is...
don't you interrupt.
Is that Jurgen Klopp's reputation, obviously trademark, is making players better, which he's done for nearly all of them, and this is a player who he hasn't been able to do it.
Well, you say that, but he's not... I mean, it kind of mirrors he bought what's the lad at Darwin, the Italian lad? Mobile. Before he left Dortmund, didn't he? And that was probably his biggest signing, Dortmund.
I think so, yeah.
Transfer fee. And he never quite got him firing. Mind you, he was following the footsteps of Lewandowski, wasn't he? So,
obviously, Nunez is following Mane.
He did get firing, wasn't he? You know, brought him in from Lech Poznan, and he became a superstar, didn't he?
So I still think if you are on slot, you'd probably be looking at Nunez, and you wouldn't be looking at him thinking, I'll ship him out, because there's an upside to Nunez. And going back to the social media stuff, we don't know why he's deleted them. Obviously, he's an emotional guy. He feeds off that when he plays, and he feeds off when the fans back him. You can tell that helps him play better, doesn't it? It really, I remember last season when they played Man City and beat them 1-0, and he came on for 20 minutes at the end, and obviously he missed a big chance, didn't he? He went through and didn't pass it when he could have squared it. But he ran City at a point where City were probably going to try and push on and get themselves back into the game. He ran them ragged, and the crowd chanted his name. And I remember thinking at that game, it wasn't really about Nunez, but in a 20-minute cameo, he made the game about him, and he fed off the crowd. But probably the flip side is true with him, and the comments get to him. He clearly, like you say, clearly scrolling, clearly has a look. And I think there's a wider conversation to be had around footballers and social media that it must be so hard. I was like Emil Heskey growing up, and I used to think, imagine being him on Instagram or Twitter in this day and age. It would have been a nightmare, wouldn't it? The amount of abuse you would have got from idiots who it's really easy to sit on social media and bash out some nasty words around someone. I mean, you can like someone as a player or dislike someone as a player, but you have to go on their social media and tell them that. Yeah. Tell them that straight. Whether it's a positive or negative comment, just talk about it with your mates in the pub. Yeah. Why do you have to direct it directly at them?
Yeah, I think the problem Nunez has got is it's not really one of his own making, which is quite ironic when you think of the things he can be working on to improve himself. But it's the price that Liverpool have paid for him. I was come in at initial 64 million. That's since gone up to 75. The extra 10 we believe are centred around things like winning the Champions League and winning the Premier League. So at the moment, he's a club record equaling signing, isn't he, alongside Van Dijk? Yeah. Now, if Liverpool had paid something closer to what they paid for Cody Gakpo or Luis Diaz, I don't think it'd be too much of an issue having him rotate and be an impact player at times in the season and maybe shutting him out to the left wing for various points. But because he is such a big money buy, that it increasingly looks like he's a flop when he's not starting games or he's just coming on in little cameos here or there when he's in a little bit of a dry spell. So that's a problem Liverpool have, and also if they do look to cash in, they're probably not going to get that money back for him either, are they? So that is not his fault, but it kind of compounds the issue as well.